All right, and we will be transitioning into our next session, which is with Human Resources, and we have Evelyn Miner Lawrence in the audience with us, and she will be leading that discussion, perhaps with some of her other team members. Commissioner Bernard?
So as Human Resources is coming up, you know, the PERS decision that occurred in Salem, uh, they're not paying attention, so. Evelyn? So I hope that you guys, while you're giving your presentation, will address the legislation that on PERS and that was just made in Salem and the potential impact on the county. You probably have numbers of people who are ready to retire or could retire, and what could that impact be? The reason I'm concerned is that we talked about a hiring freeze. That might be a big mistake considering the PERS decision. I suggested earlier that we look at perhaps position freezing. Make sure we go through and look at all the positions and determine, well, could you not hire this position, but not to freeze the whole county. The sheriff, like he had, what was 24% or 40? 43% of his
retire.
employees could retire in the next 5 years. And I'll bet you there's probably 10 to 15% who could retire tomorrow. And that would be a big challenge. I'll bet countywide it's close to 20%. I'm just guessing 20% of our employees could retire tomorrow if they wanted. And
Well, we're not prepared to.
I know. Oh,
Okay.
Although maybe you are now, right?
Yeah, somebody just.
So
set this
before,
up here,
Evelyn,
so-
before you start in, let me also mention, just, we want to kind of remind everybody of our team timeframes. So we have 50 minutes scheduled with you. That's 50 minutes scheduled with you. So about half for presentation and half for Q&A. And the group has had a lot of questions from every department so far, so I would anticipate similar with Human Resources. So that's about 25 minutes for you for presentation, and then we'll have discussion and questions. So thank you. So if you want to answer Commissioner Bernard's query first, that's fine. If you want to hold it for during your presentation, that's fine too.
Well, if I may, I'd like to hold it for the Q&A. I've brought my entire team here who are subject matter experts, and I actually have a person that focuses on workforce planning. And so her manager is here, and I believe Sherry will be here, so they'll probably be able to answer some of that question for you.
Great.
Is that
Thank
fair?
you, Evelyn. Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a presentation, and I'm gonna start, I'll introduce my team. Erin Knapp, she is the program coordinator over our budget in HR as well as administrative services, and Erin will start the presentation, and then I'll take it from there. I have Chrissy Durham, who is the manager over benefits and wellness, and then our manager, Eric Machado, who is the manager of risk and safety, and they will cover their budget areas, okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great. Good morning. I'll begin with the mission of the Department of Human Resources, which is to provide employment, benefits, and wellness, and risk management services to county departments and
And
agencies.
some of you may need to pull your microphones a little closer. It makes it much easier for our AV guys too.
That's better.
Thank you.
Okay.
They're sensitive.
As they say, lean in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the mission of the Department of Human Resources is to provide employment, benefits and wellness, and risk management services to county departments and agencies so they can have the results they need to provide high-quality services and achieve their strategic results. We're an internal services department, and I would say that this mission really does guide all the work that we do as we support our county departments. This is the second full year that we've been fully operating under the Performance ClackCo plan and focusing on our performance goals. So we've made a lot of internal work in incorporating those into all of our operations. A little bit about our department. There are 3 divisions within HR. There's the Division of Human Resources, as Evelyn mentioned, Benefits and Wellness, and Risk and Safety. There are a total of 43 positions, so that's unchanged in the proposed budget going into this next year. We do provide services to all county departments and agencies, and which includes regular status employees of all those departments, as well as supporting the needs related to temporary staff, which, as you may have heard, fluctuates during the year depending on department needs. You'll hear more about benefits and risk a little bit later in the presentation, but within HR, we do have 7 distinct programs that make up all of the work that we do within HR. So even though they're related, they are real distinct programs. So I'll just list them very quickly. We have the Director's Office, Administrative Services, Workforce Data Management, Employee and Labor Relations, Classification and Compensation, the Recruitment Program, as well as Workforce Planning and Development. So real distinct programs that we work with county departments on regularly. Next slide, please. In terms of our, one more thing about the work that we do. We have shifted and over the past 4 years and really transitioned all of our programs to support departments from a strategic business partner model. So staff and recruitment and employee and labor relations throughout all of our programs are supporting specific departments that they develop working relationships with. They get to understand their business. So that has been a real distinct shift over the last few years. Okay, and on to our budget request. Our request for this upcoming fiscal year is slightly over $66 million for the entire department. Of that, we have a request for just under $1.3 million in general fund support. So, and that is purely dedicated to the Human Resources Division. Our revenues come from department allocations, so charges that departments pay to us to support our operations in HR. Similar in risk and benefits, as well as in benefits, there's the benefit administration fee that helps support those programs. I would also just kind of note, it's hard to see from this graph, but of the total department budget, about 66% is attributed to benefits, about 17% to risk, and then 7% for the HR function.
Okay, I'll take it from here. As with all the departments, we were asked to take a cut in our budget. And so to determine where we made our cuts, we decided to take those cuts in areas that would have minimum impact to our customers and to HR service delivery. So the first initial cut that we took $32,000, and we took that from line items related to the countywide training program, from our A-team expenses. The A-team is a employee activity fund, so that we host an employee picnic every year and various different activities throughout the year. We also took reduced our funding in the employee recognition program. We typically have a recognition program every month for our employees, and we're looking to reduce that to bi-monthly versus every month. And then the last area was the food line. That was our initial cut. We were asked by the county administrator to take a further cut, so we came back with an additional cut of the $80,000, and we decided to put on hold our remodel of our office. Our space is pretty cramped. The need for more huddle space to meet with employees related to personal needs as it relates to family medical leave. We're not finding that we're having difficulty finding conference spaces. And so we're going to work with what we have in order to digest the cut. So that was the cut that we made within HR. Move to the next slide. And as I said, in taking into consideration where we took those cuts, we had to take a close look at our customers, who our customers were, because we wanted to minimize the impact to our customers and HR services. And HR's primary role is really centered around governance of the county's workforce as it relates to the consistent application of employment laws. So our first primary customer is the county as a whole, as an organization, then our departments and the employees and unions. So as you can see, there's a common thread with all three stakeholders, and it centers around the insurance of compliance with employment laws and regulations and the collective bargaining agreement. Of course, at the county's level, we want to make sure that we are in compliance and that we're minimizing whatever financial risk might happen to the county if we don't follow them or don't comply. The departments, as Aaron pointed out early on, we have 3 years ago, now 4 come August, I will be with the county for 4 years. I came in and I restructured the HR department and put in place a more of a customer service model that had a strategic focus on the various lines of businesses that we do in working and partnered with the departments. So our customers are the departments. We're providing operational support for them in the area, of course, of recruitment, class comp, employee and labor relations, our workforce planning and development efforts, and then also our workforce data management, which is the record keeping. In addition to that, safety and risk, and then wellness and benefits as well. The unions is also a big customer for as well. We have, as you know, we have 8 collective bargaining agreements, and we have 4 unions, but 8 contracts. So that is quite a load to oversee on a regular basis, okay? So I'll go into now our performance measures. As Aaron says, this is our 2nd year of working with having our performance measures in place. And I want to lead in by saying that HR has 4 primary goals. And our first goal is to provide service to departments in a timely manner, in an agreed upon timely manner. The second is that the HR staff is professional and knowledgeable in their disciplines when working with the customers. Third, I ask that HR staff are always asking the right questions to get the needed information to properly size up a situation. And then 4, that HR maintains a balance between the concern for the employee and concerns for the organization being Clackamas County, and the departments when addressing work productivity and looking at work productivity. So our first measure is the Office of the Director, and we have 2 results measures there. The first measure is just looking at the department as a whole. So by 2021, 90% of Clackamas County managers agree or strongly agree that human resources is a strategic business partner. That is the goal that we're striving for. In fiscal year 18-19, we had a target goal of 90%. As of December 31 of 18, we were at 91%. The second result measure there, the 80% of HR lines of business managers who report that they strongly agree that administrative services helps their line of business to achieve results in an efficient and timely in response, and is proactive in solving problems. This is Aaron's group. We have a pool of administrative staff that supports the various lines of businesses within HR. And Aaron make sure that that group is supporting those departments. Most of our lines of businesses within our HR do not have their own administrative staff, and so she oversees that function. The next measure for HR is the workforce data management. This is a division that is managed by Krista Weatherford, and this is where all of our records are kept. So any data you want to know about employees within Clackamas County, Krista's team is responsible for this area. She has a performance measure. We have one result measure, 95% of the departments submitting personnel actions not needing material corrections. So for fiscal year 18-19, she had a target of 80%. As of December 31 of 18, she was at 81%. And this is when we say 80%, our goal is 95%, because our record keeping, for the most part, record keeping is centralized, but the departments feed into the system. So they do the initial personnel action forms, and then they send them into our department. And oftentimes, as you can see, almost 20% of the paperwork that's coming into our office does require some correction of some sort from our staff. And Krista can talk more about the volume that they're dealing with every day. The next measure that we have is in the area of employee and labor relations. We have one result measure in that area. 80% of our grievances resolved prior to arbitration. For fiscal year 18-19, we had a target measure of 65%. As of December, the end of December, we were at 65%. It is important, I think, in an organization to try to resolve grievances at the lowest possible level. And at the lowest level, we mean either with between the union rep and the manager, the union rep and the department, or the deputy director of HR. Once grievances move to arbitration, that's much more expensive for the organization. So we are trying to get more resolved at the lower level. Next. Classification and compensation. Again, this is, I always say that classification and compensation, that is the core of the organization. This is where we group all of our jobs, compensate our jobs. We had, when I came into the organization 4 years ago, the majority of our classifications had not been reviewed holistically, but we had been reviewing them as departments requested. So we put together a 5-year strategic plan to be on a mission to review every single job classification that we had, as well as conduct a market study to ensure that we were actually had people grouped in the right jobs and that we were compensating employees appropriately. Then in 2017, the equal pay law hit Oregon, or was passed in Oregon, so that had to put a little bit of a delay on us reviewing all of our jobs holistically. But we had a goal, we do have a goal for fiscal year 18-19 of 60% of those classifications being reviewed. As of December of last year, we were at 43%. Recruitment, we have one result for that area. 70% of open positions are filled within 90 days from the date of requisition. It's a 65% for 18-19, and as of December 31st, we were at 64%. I'm just going to do these quickly. Our next is the workforce planning and development. These are all the areas within human resources. In this area, we have 3 result measures. The first is related to the workforce planning efforts, and that will probably Sherry or Jerry will be able to answer the questions about our workforce, the composition of our workforce. But 90% of the county's departments will have a workforce planning element integrated into their strategic business plan. That's the goal that we're working towards. For 18-19, we had a measure of 71%. As of the end of December, we were at 71%. The second measure for this division, have a 95% of the employees will have had a documented performance measure. This is not a goal that we are very proud of. When I say documented, that means every employee within the organization would have had a performance evaluation with documentation. So we're starting slow. We had, for our measure for 18-19 was 50%. And as of December of last year, we were at 31% of the workforce has actually had a documented performance evaluation and a discussion with their manager. The last measure for this division is related to the quality of the training programs that are delivered by this division. And again, they have a measure of 90%. And as for 95% for 18-19, and as of the end of December, they were at 92%. Okay. I have this slide up here because I think it's important to provide you with somewhat of an overview in the, for the slide that follows. As I said, 4 years ago, I would say that the Human Resources Department was an organization, human resources, there's 3 areas we can be. We can be in the red, we can be in the green, or we can be in the yellow. 4 years ago, when I came into the organization, I would say that we were in the yellow. Over the course of the last 4 years, there's been various different employment laws that have been passed that have impacted our operations. And that has moved that gauge needle from the yellow now into the red. One of the critical tools that we need in order to successfully monitor where we are with various different functions as it relates to our workforce is really our HRS system. Our HRS system, it is quite outdated. It has not been replaced in over 20 years. There are things that we have to comply with in order to be in compliance with federal laws and state laws, that our system can't give us the data to do it without some upgrades. So I put in the center of the circle that it's not just the HRS system, but it is the analytical data that we need from that system. And that system really supports all of HR's functions, our classifications and compensation function, our benefits and leave administration, the recruitment practices, our labor relations, as well as workforce development. Okay.
Are you talking about PeopleSoft? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we have
Yeah,
today is
yes.
PeopleSoft. Yes,
Yeah.
that is correct. Okay. So what are the emerging issues for HR? So we'll start, as I said, with equal pay. We have over 2,200 employees, is that right? 24 employees. And the law does require us to do an analysis of our entire workforce. So that has required us to put a little bit of a delay on our strategic plan of reviewing all of the classifications and now looking at the organization as a whole. Once we complete that analysis, it will tell us where we have discrepancies. And I anticipate that there will be discrepancies. In order for us not to backslide, we're going to have to monitor how we're paying people. We're going to have to be monitoring closely how employees are coming into the organization. And we will need a system that will allow us to support that and do that work. The The next area, a huge initiative for us and changes is with the, in the area of labor relations. Again, consistency, consistency of application of the collective bargaining agreements, employment laws is critical. When we do discipline, we want to make sure that if an employee has violated a workplace rule, that West can't respond one way and transportation responds another way if they're like infractions. They have to be the same. And so we have to have a system that will allow us to better monitor how we're making decisions across the organization. The next emerging issue for us is in our policies and our policies. Like our classification system, our policies, some of them have not been reviewed. Some of them are over 20 years old, and the laws have changed. We have made a real diligent effort to try to address and get these policies up to date, but the day-to-day demands for HR services from the departments override our ability to get this work done. So we have to be in compliance. We've got leave laws that are out of compliance and other policies as well. So we will be hiring an outside support to help us get those policies up to date. The other area that is we're seeing emerging trend is in the complaints that we're getting. Our complaint workload is getting to be quite heavy, and we don't have the staff internally to address these complaints in a timely manner. We're receiving complaints that are related to sexual harassment, workplace retaliation, hostile work environment, and we can't stay on top of them. So we will be contracting with an outside investigators to help us do these investigations in a timely manner. And again, tying it back to the pyramid there with our customers to minimize the risk to the county not getting these done in a timely manner. The next emerging issue for us is around the employee engagement. And again, it's been, from my knowledge and what staff has shared with me, is that the county has never done in their tenure, and I'm the newest kid in the group, have done an employee engagement, but we've got a lot of emerging issues. We have a number of complaints coming through our office, and I don't know what's the center of it. And so we don't do evaluations holistically like we should. So part of the employee engagement survey is for us to take a pulse of what is going on in the organization so that we can begin to problem solve around that. And I've already spoke to the ERP need there. This past year, we hired a consultant to come in because I'm new to PeopleSoft. I'm not familiar with PeopleSoft. I don't know what it can do and what it can't do. And I've never used PeopleSoft in other organizations in which I've managed HR. So I wanted to better understand what the capacity of this system is and what it could do. So what I asked the staff to do was we hired a consultant to do a business process review of HR businesses, our business processes, and how it aligned with the system, and to determine, where is it working, where is it not working, what are the shortcomings, and what are the gaps. So our next step now, we've completed that work, and our next step now is to go out and do a cost-benefit analysis to determine where do we go from here. So we know where the gaps are, we know what the causes of the gaps are. And we have three options. We have one, to stay with what we have, PeopleSoft, and do nothing and continue to have the limitations that we have. Or we can continue with PeopleSoft, blow it up basically and reconfigure it so that it can meet our needs. Or the third option would be to get an entirely new system. So that's where the study left us. Okay, we'll go to the next slide.
Let me do a time check. We're basically at about the end of the presentation part, but I'm going to permit another 5 or 6 minutes to
Okay.
continue through the handout. And then we have several questions from the group, and then the PERS one being the first question that we'll, have answered.
Okay, so
okay with you?
we'll turn it over to benefits and risk then.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing us additional time. So I wanted to speak to these results in the benefits and wellness function. So each of these results represents a starting point for ensuring data integrity and establishing a baseline measurement. Also, the data will help us begin to understand customer impacts. For example, unmet needs, monitoring and evaluating financial and legal risks, and shape strategy and future analytics. So that applies to all three of these results. As Evelyn is talking about some of the changes that have gone on within our HR team, really the organization has relied heavily on paper processes, especially in my area. That first result on leave administration, that's for protected leaves of absence, Family and Medical Leave Act, and the Oregon Family Leave Act. Those are mandates. Those are not optional. And when PeopleSoft was implemented pre-2000, there wasn't a need to have all of the functionality in PeopleSoft at the time. So what that left us with was really very manual processes. And we have leave utilization that is fairly typical, except that we have almost 50% of our leaves are intermittent, and that requires lots of monitoring, being able to evaluate what's going on, and being able to partner with the departments and employees to give them good information so that they can, on the department side, keep their operations running. And so we are really at a challenging point with that. So we've started at the very beginning, which is to just get into PeopleSoft and clean up the data and ensure data integrity. And starting at the very beginning, since we haven't had to rely on that system, we're cleaning that up. That is a result that I don't anticipate will stay on here. Going forward, it's going to be within our own, how we're evaluating our operations, just for data quality, but that's something that you won't see again likely next year. That's just cleaning it up and moving on. The second result is around returning employees to work within the 180-day self-insured part of the disability plan. The county is self-insured for the first 180 days of a disability claim, non-occupational. And that is, that I think is a reasonable objective. And we're hoping to, as we learn more about our population and identifying any of those barriers, work additionally with risk and safety to identify if there are other ways that we can help employees return to work in a timely way, and whatever those solutions might be. The third is related to the wellness program and looking to ensure that 90% or more of participants agree or strongly agree that the offered programming contributes to their well-being. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One, it's really an employee engagement measure. And two, it also is a way for us to kind of mobilize around some of the initiatives we have for the health and wellness programs overall. It's a way to get out there and bring things to people and move them around a little bit. So that's a really important thing. And so that's really where we're starting. And I'll just move on to the next slide quickly. I want to leave you 2.5 minutes. So 3 primary areas that we're continuing to work on. These are things that we will continue to work on for a long time. These are foundational elements of a benefits and wellness program. So the self-insurance fund transparency, we are really on track at this point. I'm feeling really good that we've got the 3 core areas that we need in a self-insured program in place. The foundation is there now. The reserves we anticipate will be fully funded within the self-insured fund, 760, and none in the general fund at the end of fiscal year 2021. Leave and Disability Administration, I spoke with you just quickly about some of the challenges that we have, and we are really looking at evaluating our business processes, understanding who our customers are, what they need, and what some of our challenges are. And then the final is just continuing to develop strategies to address the rising costs of delivering a benefits program. We want to ensure that we are offering the best program that we can, and it's in alignment with the organizational goals, and that we're able to monitor that and provide good information to our customers. And I will stop there.
Eric?
Real briefly, thank you, Eric Machado with Risk Management. I just want to highlight quickly that there's an element of risk in every decision we make as an organization. So I can truly say that my group, everybody in this organization is a customer. I have no doubt you've heard the word risk brought up in a lot of other presentations in the last few days. So it's a vital area, and I'm proud to lead it. The two results I want to highlight both cover workers' compensation and liability programs. This is where the vast majority of my budgeted dollars lie. So what they are they're intended to measure the success of the overall program to industry metrics. The experience modification rate, that top one, is another way to compare us to our industry peers. It's a number used by insurance companies and the state of Oregon to gauge both past cost of injuries and the future chances of risk. One is the standard baseline number, the average, and so anything below that, which is the target, 1 or below, means you're doing a better job. The other one is is comparing actual liability claims amounts paid to what is expected based on a third-party actuarial study. Every year I get an actuarial study to determine how much we are expected to pay, and then this measure shows how much we actually did pay. Next slide, please. In order to address emerging issues in the risk and safety area, we've undertaken several strategic initiatives to boost some efficiencies and to improve our underlying systems and processes. The biggest one is we're in the midst of implementing an upgraded risk management information system. This will allow us to better serve all of our customers, to improve our data analysis of our current risks, and to mitigate potential emerging issues. Some of these emerging issues are things such as increasing costs associated with workers' compensation. Medical costs are continuing to rise. Increasing liability claims costs when the third party files a claim against us, sues the county. We need to manage that accordingly. And then finally, driving and fleet safety is always an ongoing risk. We have approximately 1,000 vehicles in the county vehicles on top of personal vehicles that are using county business. So we're always trying to manage that. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Good, thank you. Let's start with Commissioner Bernard so that we can get back to the PERS question, and you had one other quick clarification or question? So thank you.
Well, the PERS question and the other, it's more of a comment. I mean, I was, your comment about who's being evaluated. I mean, we need to figure out a way to make that happen, and whether that's sanctioning, I don't know what that means, enforcing evaluations. I mean, I ran a small business for years, and it was very difficult for me to make myself do evaluations. I get it, but it's something we have to do. It opens us up to risk, and we can't afford to that risk. So the other question was, how many employees do we have who could retire very soon?
I have your answer. We have 20% of our employees are likely to retire within the next 5 years.
20%.
20%.
And
220 approximately.
Sherry is here. This is Sherry Reedman, and she oversees the workforce planning effort.
440 would it be? Yeah, 480.
I don't know.
So I'm Sherry Reedman, Workforce Planning Coordinator here in HR, and I brought a table that has all the departments broken out. I don't know if it's appropriate to hand that out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That'd
Yeah.
be helpful.
So
Can we
basically,
go three-hole punch that first?
yeah, the county as a whole, our entire workforce, 17% are likely eligible to retire within the next 5 years. And from the information you're seeing, it varies from department to department. The sheriff's office is actually at 7% because they're one of the younger departments, but I would say that 43% was probably the command staff at the sheriff's office.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was.
yes,
That is what it
Yeah.
was.
yeah,
Yeah.
PERS legislation did pass the Oregon House and Senate and signed by the governor. That is going to decrease the pension benefits for our employees if it stands the challenges that are likely to happen. And so we can expect that employees who are currently eligible are going to retire before their benefits are affected, which I believe would be by the end of this calendar year.
My
So,
understanding.
yeah, to support departments and planning for that, we're available, I'm available, to make sure Chair Bernard actually hit the nail on the head. Review their workforce, identify key and critical positions, make sure they have a plan for turnover when it happens. So, yeah, I wonder if I should include that one or not, but I always do. And so you're aware of the numbers. This is not the most accurate data because we don't have access to all of an employee's time in service for prior employers. So we just base it on average retirement age. Average retirement age for county employees as a whole is 62. So once they hit 57 and older, they make that chart. Average retirement age for police and fire is 57. They're 5 years younger. So that's what that graph shows.
I went at 50.
Thank you.
Well, Ken took us
Thank
over
you.
the top.
We have
I planned.
Commissioner Humberston, then Mr. Feely, Commissioner Savas, and Ms. Coldwell.
Thank you. In listening to your presentation, what stood out to me, well, let me preface my remarks by recognizing that you have done a lot of work and you have some limitations because of PeopleSoft and some changes in the law that are going to require extra work, like the Equal Pay Act. So I don't want this to be seen as just critical of all the work that you do, because it's not. But what stood out was that you had personnel action forms that were improperly filled out by supervisors, which makes it difficult to resolve grievances, obviously. You pointed out that you're getting increased complaints for things like sexual harassment and poison, I forget the term.
Hostile work
Hostile workforce, those kinds of things, which led right to one of your performance goals, as far as I was concerned, which is increasing training. When you add to that, people that are supervisors not doing employee evaluations, I can tell you that my evaluation was dependent upon making sure I did my employees' evaluations when I was working in a civil service environment. And I think I had 13 that I had to do on a regular basis. I don't know what our span of control is, but that's a primary function of a supervisor. And their evaluations should be dependent upon making sure that they've done the evaluations of their employees. That's just basic accountability. But I'll back up to the training being probably one of the most critical things that you'll need to work on for our supervisors, because that will address some of those other problems that you acknowledged in your presentation. Thank you. It's not really a question, just an observation. So doesn't beg an answer.
Mr. Feely, and I do want to do a time check again and point out that according to our calendar, we've got about 5 more minutes, but we extended, so I'm going to say about 10 more minutes for our discussion portion. And the thing that comes next after this presentation is a short break, so we're just going into the break time, not to another production.
Well, I'm
another
not going to do
department.
anything to cut into our break.
Wise man.
Thank you,
I just
Madam
wanted
Chair.
to point out it wasn't another department, so thank you.
So my first question is for Eric. The question came up about risk mitigation last week, and a question was posed to the sheriff, what he is, head of the sheriff's office is doing to minimize lawsuits, et cetera. And I'm sure he's one of your most frequent clients is law enforcement, always is. So my question for you is, what are you doing to assist the departments in their own risk mitigation, and maybe specifically answer with regard to public safety, the sheriff's office?
Sure, good question. So the way my group is broken up is we have 3 safety and loss control consultants that are spread out amongst the county departments. One is specifically embedded in Wes, and the other 2 handle the rest of the county departments, and they're broken up. And so we have a person, we have one of our safety and loss control consultants works directly with the sheriff's department on regular safety committee stuff. Their accident review board. There's always attendance there, along with the jail too. The jail risk management's a huge piece. We actually just had a jail risk management audit last month, last month. So we're expecting the results from that.
Who was that done by?
That was done by CIS, which is our partner through OPEEP, and we actually got I was able to use grant monies through our OPEEP excess insure to get that jail risk management audit done for no cost to us. So it's going to be just about best practices there, because the jail is such a high risk operation. Additionally, as I mentioned, the work I'm doing with improving our systems, our internal risk management information system, the one that I inherited when I got here a year and a half ago was about 20 years old, similar vein to the PeopleSoft system. Identified that initially as something that needed to be upgraded. Worked through the process with the departments last year, and got approval to upgrade the system. So we're moving to a new system. It's called Origami, and this will allow a lot better, number one, data analysis for my group, and additionally data reporting out to the county. So the individual departments, the sheriff's department, yes, the sheriff's department is my biggest customer. They also pay the biggest allocation amount in as a result. So I want to be able to give them additional data, more pertinent data, more real-time data that they can act on, and we can work with them to reduce areas that are trending up in the wrong way, vehicle accidents, wrongful arrests, whatever it may be. We want to work on that.
Good, thank you. And then my next question is on ERP. So I guess that'd be you, Evelyn. And I'm curious to know what level of work you're doing with the various county departments in analyzing the options that are before you right now.
Okay, so
And
I'm going
And I come to this question from my own experience of my last employer, and I know by not working sufficiently with some of the departments, some major things were overlooked, like unique FLSA schedules and just things that, had to be part of the system. But anyway.
I'm going to introduce Krista Weatherford. She manages that union, and she
Okay.
can address your questions better.
From the HR perspective, we're really early in the game. So we are, at this point, have spent the last year and a half really looking at.
Is your microphone on, Kristen?
It's not close enough.
No, it's not, and
Yeah,
it's
move
not
it.
on
it's
either,
not
so it's
either,
both.
so-
A double whammy there.
Thank you.
We've really focused on HR itself and what we are doing internally, and as Evelyn mentioned, what is our business practice, looking at the gaps, what are the root causes of those gaps. But we also, I think you talked a little bit that with technology services who came before
we
us.
did.
And this is what we feel is really a 3-group project. Our ERP is just not HR or finance.
No.
It's the both of them together.
It's enterprise-wide.
It's
That's why
enterprise-wide.
it's
So
called that, right?
the 3 groups are working together. The finance is finishing the tech gap part of their business process review, and then to move into the cost-benefit analysis to really see what our options are. I think once we have selected what our path is, then is the time to bring the departments in and to start figuring out what is they feel their needs and how we're balancing the compliance and the business side of the house, both for HR and the departments. So I think it's a little early.
All right, I can respect your opinion. I
Thank you.
respectfully take some exception to it, because I think they should be involved. I mean, they're major users of your system, and you've talked about things coming from the departments that have errors on them. I mean, anyway, that's just my feedback. And as a quick question for Christy, The 32 million in M&S proposed for next year, is that just payment of claims? Is that the claims?
Yes, the
majority
majority
of
of
it.
that is for
Okay.
claims.
All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Savas and then Ms. Caldwell.
Well, thank you all. Evelyn, I just want to give kudos out to yourself and your department. You've always been fantastic at giving us the information we've needed and some of the critical things we deal with sometimes when risk or whatnot occurs or employment issues arise. And yet your department sometimes does not have a lot of control over a number of the factors, whether it's inputting the data or whether it's how folks are evaluated. And I just want to just speak a little bit that, from my experience, that the skill sets required to evaluate people as effectively as possible can lead to tension or on the benefit side, retention, quality of work, workplace morale, and a number of things can lead to really good evaluations. But that takes training at management level, the evaluator itself. And that's something you don't have a lot of control of in your department. So I can understand all those challenges. I did want to ask the question, because you did impress upon us, your situation and your needs. So what is it that we could help? What do you need the most?
That's an excellent question. I have a laundry list.
You should never open that door.
No. You open Pandora's box.
Yeah.
One thing that I need is the support that HR, that everyone is in compliance with our existing policies. That we're all one employer. And it doesn't matter what department, if we have policies and regulations that we need to use to govern, that everyone, there's no exceptions being made. So that would be critical in addressing some of the problems. Some of the inconsistencies that we have is because we haven't been consistent, and there's been exceptions made for various reasons along the way, and I won't go into more detail on that. The other is that we really do need automation of our systems so that we can better monitor what's going on in the organizations. It is critical. The work that Krista does for the organization, I always say that this is my engine of my department. And like when your car can't run unless that engine is constantly tuned up and maintenance is there. And it's been neglected far too long. And they do a beautiful job in trying to support the functions within HR, but we're at that limit that we can't, they just can't meet our needs anymore.
Right.
So those are the two.
Okay. I think you answered my question. The order may have been reversed, but
Okay.
you mentioned the two. But
Okay.
those are the two that I thought. But so with that, I thought, I don't know if that's the right time to maybe for a parking lot issue, and I don't know what that would be, but maybe we can talk about that. On the policy side, I think it really becomes where a request from your department for whatever it may be from another department, between silos, if you will. I think that's, you didn't use that word, but I will. That there needs to be a policy in which that you have really, in the end, a result in which your needs are met, or the department's needs are met in order to do your work properly. So, there needs to be cooperation between those departments. And I don't know if that's a policy question, probably too complex to break down today, but it seems as though there ought to be a little bit elevation in the authority, if you will. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but that when your department sees a shortcoming, that it's addressed in a way. I imagine that your only source is through the administration.
Yes.
Administrator, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard the same thing from IT this morning. Yeah.
Ms. Caldwell? Caldwell.
Thank you.
Good.
I asked last year about how the employee workforce reflects the diversity of the community, the greater community. And I thought your numbers looked really good when you gave me the answers last year. So I have two questions around that. One of them is, I don't see any reflections of cultural competency in your key results, which I'd like to see. I don't have a view of this, of what the county is doing in terms of cultural competency across all departments. Things like, bilingual staff in key areas, you might be doing that, but it would be really good to have that reflected. The other question I have is whether you've been doing any planning for either anticipating layoffs or opportunities from retirements in order to maintain the good numbers that you've got in terms of diversity. That could get a little bit, difficult to skew, difficult to manage around employees coming and going. So if you could talk about those things, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes, I can talk about that. And I'll bring JJ to the mic as well. But in way of planning for wherever decision the county makes regarding our workforce reduction, we are just in the early stages of that. I have asked to pull off of the shelf our reduction plan. And so we're just looking at that. I'm going to be forming a committee made up of recruitment manager, JJ Peters, and myself, and workforce development and planning to take a look at that, to make recommendations to the county administrator of what that process might look like. I've had to, unfortunately, be in a position where I've had to reduce workforce, and there are strategic positions within the organization, so that whatever direction the county decides to go, I would assume that we still want to be able to maintain those positions that are critical to operations in order to go forward. And so that would require some type of review process as they come into HR. We currently have quite a bit of a backlog with current positions that are in the wings waiting to be filled, and JJ can kind of update you where we are with that as well, because we have to make some decision about what we're going to do with those positions that are in a pending status as well.
Thank you for question and acknowledgement. Since we met with you last year, we run our data every year to see how we're comparing to our labor market, which is considered the Portland metropolitan area. And this data is from September 2018, but we had some really exciting things happen. We actually eliminated 2 underutilizations that in the 20 years I've been here have been in existence. So that was pretty huge. So we have definitely been making progress, and as we talk about with Emmett Wheatfall, it's a long process. It takes developing those relationships and the hard work over time, but we eliminated the goal for in the professional job category for minorities. We're no longer underutilized as of September of 2018 in that area. That doesn't mean we can stop. We need to continue our efforts as we have been. We also were able to eliminate our goal in protective services for minority candidates as well. So those were 2 huge positive steps in the right direction, and we've had conversations with our executive management team that we need to continue what we're doing to help in that area. Bilingual pay has been a big topic. There was some contract language that was negotiated this last go-round, which required us to hit the pause button and really talk about how we designate positions as bilingual. I also know, and I don't know, I think county administration will be talking with you later. I'm not sure if Emmett's going to be speaking to some of the initiatives that he's working on in that area, but we do work in partnership with him in that area to help make sure the needs of the community are being served and that our workforce is reflecting the community that we serve. Evelyn talked about the recruitment backlog. Despite being ahead of pace and over our projections for what we expected to have for recruitment requests this year, we still have a backlog currently of 23 recruitments. Those are positions that are waiting assignment. That actually represents 36 vacancies, but we
typically try to fill as many positions for the same classification from one recruitment as we can. The largest bulk of that is for Health, Housing, and Human Services. They currently have 12 recruitments that are awaiting assignment. That's despite adding another half recruiter earlier in the year to help address that backlog as best we could. Department of Transportation Development is the second largest backlog. They currently have 5 in the queue. Our juvenile department has 2, and then we have several departments that have 1 that are awaiting assignment: Water Environment Service, Community Corrections, Assessment and Taxation, and Technology Services. So I know Evelyn and I have had some conversations about the hiring freeze and what exactly that will mean. I think she and Gary have had some initial conversations, and we look forward to working with county administration to determine what process we're going to use to help make those decisions and move forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
So I've been studying this budget and I'm trying to figure out where I can track the cost of benefits. Like, where is that in this budget? Where do I see that?
You see that under Fund 760.
Okay, tell me what page.
One moment, please. And you don't have all of the details in this. I'm happy to provide you the details so that you can see specifically if it's around the medical plan, the dental plan, the disability, or operations.
Okay,
So
so
would
I'm
you
not
prefer,
missing
you're not
something.
going to, right.
Because it's not,
This
okay.
is a-
So I
a
do
roll-up.
have the question of, I'm just curious to see, before we go into deliberations, what has been the increase in the benefit costs. And I'm also interested in PERS and the increase in the PERS costs. And I'm not sure if that comes through
That does go through
you
HR,
or
it's finance.
where those numbers, where we'd see those numbers in a budget and what those costs, the liability costs.
That would
About
be
a
in
finite.
fringe. That's
So-
in
What? Go ahead.
fringe.
It's in fringe, but at this level of consolidation, it's in personnel services. Like your personnel service lines is wages and benefits.
So
Under
it shows
which
up
part?
in the department itself.
Huh?
It shows it
Department.
in every department.
Under
Right.
personnel.
Right.
Okay,
So there's
Thank
wages
you.
in one,
For
benefits in the
PERS
other.
and like, I mean, some of the
so it's all
healthcare flows through you,
Every
but
department.
even some of the Providence stuff, it just goes to a liability account. So you actually see the expense in the department's budget.
so I'm just interested, before we begin our discussion, to know those two things. I'm interested in the cost, the increase in cost and benefits and the increase in costs in the PERS liability. That
You
we
say,
can't, we
you
can't
mean
see.
all other benefits besides PERS, basically?
I'm just interested in how our costs are increasing and the costs related to employees. Yeah.
So I don't have that information right in front
That's
of me,
fine.
but I'm happy to send that to the committee so that you can have that. But I would say that our increase year over year is, it is not out of line with our peers. I think that we're doing a pretty good job overall, and the Benefits Review Committee is responsible for looking at the plan design. We are in the process. We've just started out this next renewal season. So we're looking at just getting some of those foundations in place as the committee. In July, we'll have a sense of what the renewal is. But what we budgeted for was about a 7% increase, and that is reflected in the personnel costs. So I'm speaking only of the health plans, not about the rest of the benefit programs and offerings. That's our biggest spend.
Okay, and are all of those costs within each line item of every department under personnel and services
Yes,
costs?
those
So
assumptions
that
are all
doesn't-
in there.
That isn't flowing through to you and then back out again through an allocation?
No, those are completely separate. So the departments pay those, everything, some of those are liability accounts, so they go in and out. Others flow into the self-insured fund, and we pay those out for claims for the self-insured plans, as well as the administrative costs. So the employee contribution, the employer contribution, both are received as revenues in Fund 760, and then we pay them out
Okay,
as expenses.
great. I'm just interested on the macro, big picture, what is the, President, if you say it's 7% across the board,
Yes.
and then what PERS is as well. So we can get that after when we go into
We
deliberations.
have one last quick question from Commissioner Humberston, and then we're going to take a quick break.
It's in relation to Commissioner Fisher's question. Rule of thumb used to be about 30% of an employee's cost was the entire benefit package. Is that still a good general rule of thumb? Or is that ancient history?
It's probably
I would
closer to
say that in
50.
this environment with PERS, it's approaching ancient history. So
closer to
if,
Suggests that it's higher.
Probably closer
it
to
is definitely higher
50%.
than 30%.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. I think next year we need to allocate more time for your department. So we thank you very much because this is really, really crucial. So thank you. We are going to recess for like no more than 10 minutes. So if folks will be back here by 5 minutes.